Welcome back to an episode of Geek Warning, the podcast that puts the world's most interesting cycling tech into one place. I'm Dave Rome, back this week once again. Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to be back. I'm excited about quite a few of the topics this week, so I'm thrilled.
The topics this week, some people will love them, some people won't, and that's because the road season, I mean, we're right in the midst of a world championship, but yet from a tech side of or from a tech point of view, things are a little bit more on the quiet front there. So yeah, the road season's coming to a close, but with that, it seems like the bike industry shifted its focus to the dirt. So plenty in the drop bar space as far as gravel goes, and even more from the mountain bike world as far as exciting new tech goes. So expect a reasonable amount of dirt talk versus road talk in this episode, but we'll try and keep the roadies satisfied as well. So Brad, I think let's cover off a bit of news before we dive into what's on our mind, and of course answer a few of our member questions. But should we cover the road stuff first?
Why not? Yeah, let's jump in. Start with the pavement and get wild toward the end.
BMC, they have just announced a new range of masterpiece bikes. So these are like they kind of take the mold of the existing models and then give them the full star treatment as far as the layup goes. So these are made in Europe and, sort of price no consideration. They give me vibes of a Cervelo you have in your possession, Brad. Do you agree with that?
To an extent, I do. Yeah, the Cervelo in question is a R5 Project California. It was the first round of Cervelo's attempt at this sort of holy grail kind of halo bike concept, and similar in its both construction and in its marketing as sort of a beyond ultimate level of, performance and blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, made by, or at least involved the actual engineers of the bike in the production process for these frames, which to some extent may explain the price tag, which is quite lofty. I think we can just stop with the nonsense, and it's a $9,000 or thereabouts in the equivalent euros neighborhood.
For a frame set.
For a frame set, and this time, yep. Dave, as you mentioned to me just before we started comparing this to other Masterpiece Collection versions, this one does not actually include the very fancy travel cases that previous ones did. So that's actually sold separately for this bike. So add that to the already lofty price tag, and you're really,
I think it's another $1,400.
Yeah, in the stratosphere for sure. And you still have wheels and a Grupo to buy. So for a frame set and a bag, you're already well over the price of most people's new bike. And whether that's worth it or not is a matter of opinion and or taste. But we have 100 grams of weight savings, which is perhaps the most eye-popping figure compared to the stock specs for this bike, at least for me, Dave. But we did conjecture that some of that may be due to the absence of paint, which this bike does not have. It's a bare carbon bike, which I presume has a little bit of a clear coat, although they call it untreated carbon in their press release. I imagine there's the very minimal amount of treatment for UV type protection, which carbon is otherwise subject to some degradation if exposed to sunlight and UV rays. But other than that, it's a bare naked carbon bike, as with the previous versions from the Masterpiece collection of BMCs, with just some simple branding. So I imagine the weight saved, no offense, BMC, a lot of that, as we know, Dave, paint can weigh more than 200 grams for a painted frame. So
there's paint is absolutely going to be a part of this, but there's also definitely more to it than just the paint.
Yes.
So that 100 grams is actually just in the frame alone, which makes then they save further weight in the fork and the seat post. So almost 200 grams saved out of the frame set package, which is pretty impressive for some stuff that was already what you would have thought kind of toward the edge of what can be done in carbon fiber. But obviously it's all reflected in that price point. The other details of this, it applies to both versions of the Teammachine. So they've got this available for the SLR and also the R, which is their more race-focused version that the teams have been riding lately. That more Red Bull collaborated aero version. So it looks like a cool bike. Obviously, $9,000 for a frame set is eye-watering, but hey, I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically handmade, essentially. I mean, until you stick it in the oven for final curing, but the panels of carbon, the pieces individually are placed, and there's very little overlap and very little excess material or glue, which may have.
The regular version's handmade, but this is
made in Europe. Yeah,
arguably with
a little more care.
And you'd probably assume a bit more painstakingly following of the layup schedule. So yeah, it's neat. I don't know how many of them they'll sell. They haven't really said how many they're making, just that they will be in limited quantities. But anyway, looks nice. I won't own one, but hope someone else does.
And I hope it's worth every penny too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you still have your Cervelo, don't you? Your California.
I do, and I think it's like one of those things now where the likelihood of recouping what I feel it's worth is so far gone that maybe it never was possible. But also just because of kind of the exclusivity and even the nostalgia for the time and place that I was in life at the time. And it is a wonderful bike. It still rides incredibly well compared to many more modern bikes I've had since then. It's my style of bike too, very pared down and purposeful. And so anyway, I still have it. It's a lovely bike. It's probably the lightest bike I will maybe ever own, since they seem to be getting a little bit heavier these days, but it's under 13 pounds for a 58, which is pretty good. And daily driver, for me for a number of years. So it was not like, just for special occasions or anything like that. So it was a pretty special bike. And, the aesthetic of this BMC is kind of reminiscent of that. And I do like that style. And of course, the price tag is eye-watering. And so that might keep me from adding another one to my collection like this. But it's certainly appealing.
Nice. All right. Well, yeah, BMC Masterpiece. If it intrigues you, go check it out. But I guess, a bit of unfortunate news, actually, and it's closely related to handmade carbon and incredibly lightweight bikes. But Bob Parlee of Parlee Cycles, founder of Parlee Cycles, unfortunately has passed away after a pretty lengthy battle with cancer. Thoughts go out to his entire family and also the team that remain at Parlee Cycles. It's under new ownership these days, and a lot of the old staff remain there. So thoughts out to everyone there.
And it doesn't sound like it affects the company's future at the moment or by any means, but it's an unfortunate piece of news. And
it does sound like Bob took steps to, the company did hit financial trouble during COVID, but recently Bob had taken steps to get the company under new ownership. So, he was really just in a design role there, but it didn't even sound that, when I last spoke to the new owner, it didn't sound like Bob was, day-to-day involved in the company. So I think, the company that we see today is going to keep going on and hopefully, doing well with that name as a legacy. All right. So from sad news to happier times, there's quite a bit of movement in the off-road world. Brad, before we get to some mountain bike stuff, let's talk about these new Bontrager Paradigm Pro 30 gravel wheels.
Paradigm.
How do you what's the word?
It's pronounced paradigm, but you pronounce it phonetically. I like paradigm. But although we're preceding mountain bike, but are we, Dave? These are reminiscent of a mountain bike wheel set.
All right, so this is a 29 internal width gravel wheel, yet it's using the identical rim from Bontrager's Covey range of cross-country mountain bike wheels. So it's basically just more repurposing a mountain bike product, which is a trend we've seen before. Brad, when did we last see this trend?
Everywhere we look. The trend of these, DT Swiss is doing similar things. I think all wheel brands are kind of adapting some existing mountain bike technology or very subtly derived technology that is quite reminiscent of mountain bike stuff that has existed. But
it's kind of every step along the way of gravel rims getting wider. We've seen brands repurpose what were previously old 29er mountain bike rims.
Yes, which kind of says it all for the state of gravel anyway these days. We see, and we talked on many episodes now of the adaptation of mountain bike frames with some geometry calculations done to make drop bars realistic for racing on what are mountain bike frames with mountain bike tires, 2.4 inch wide, cross country racing tires. But as the genre kind of blends a little bit, as some events take gravel bikes further than they've gone before, to new limits. Sure, the technology has to adapt, and it always has. And a lot of these trends we saw 10 or 15 years ago, the exact kind of evolution on the mountain bike side. And so I don't find it too surprising. And sometimes,
and it's not a bad thing either. Like we're not meaning to sound negative about this. I mean, these wheels, like they carry a claim weight of 1380 grams, and they seem relatively well priced and seem to tick all the boxes. So I mean, it's
I think in the past we've kind of sort of, I wouldn't say argued, but we've presented the notion that a hardtail cross-country mountain bike can sometimes be better than a gravel bike in certain gravel applications when the gravel gets a little too gravelly, Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, this actually makes the gravel genre a little bit more self-contained, because it has now products that are sort of filling the void, as it were, where a mountain bike may have been a better option. Now, if you have a gravel wheel set for your otherwise gravel bike that is sort of a mountain bike wheel set in terms of its capability, as well as the tires that it can accommodate, then you're kind of leaning back towards where a gravel bike makes more sense than it might have otherwise in the same scenario where the mountain bike seemed to make sense a year ago,
For sure. So I mean, this certainly isn't the first wheel to reusing a mountain bike rim. It certainly won't be the last, but it looks good. 24-hole spoke count front and rear. The hubs are obviously not mountain bike hubs. They're designed around gravel widths, 142 rear and 100 mil front. $1,400 USD for the pair. So I'm liking these, actually. I think, if you wanted to run like a 2.0 or more on your gravel bike, say like a 50 mil tire or wider, then at that point, something like a 29 internal width rim starts to make a lot of sense. So good to have options. Anyway, Brad, so mountain biking has been on my mind for the last few weeks, specifically that I went to Iceland to test Lauf's entry into mountain bikes, and then refused to come home after that. But this bike is pretty interesting. I've got a full write-up about it on Escape Collective, so we won't talk about it for too long. There's also a special bonus episode chatting with the people from Lauf about this bike, about their design decisions, also about how a small company out of Iceland seems to be able to kind of set benchmark pricing for the bikes it does, which is amazing. But that episode is now live, and you can listen to half of it if you're not a member, or you can enjoy the full thing if you do happen to support what Escape Collective does, and if you're a member of Escape Collective. But Brad, this bike's pretty interesting. It's single pivot. They've taken some design decisions that have given them freedoms in tire clearance. And while most cross-country bikes of this, say, travel and weight, are sort of designed around fitting no more than a 29 by 2.4 inch tire, this one can fit up to a 29 by 3 inch tire and comes stock with 2.6 inch wide claimed width tires. And it brings up my question, Brad, which is, do you think that tire widths in cross-country racing will trend even wider than where they are at the moment, which is 29 by 2.4?
Although it seems shocking, I've been shocked so many times throughout my life that I'm going to say, yes, I do think bikes will continue to grow slightly in tire width for cross-country oriented mountain bikes. And, the Specialized sponsored teams this year frequently seen using 2.5s, which is awfully close to a 2.6. Certain tire brands may, like you said, the claimed width that's the key. Rim width can have some effect on how wide a tire measures as well. So there's some variability there, but in the last couple of years, really, you've seen almost everyone switch from like a no wider really than like a 2.25 or 2.3 option. Now it's like no one's running that anymore unless it's muddy, and you have like a mud spike option in that width, and everyone else is up to 2.4, 2.5. extremely low pressures, every test, and even just riding it, feeling it, experiencing the grip and the comfort and the control that you have. It's essentially just adding another element of suspension to the bike, and the same trends exist on the road and on gravel, as we just discussed as well. And for the same reasons. And, when you really get down to measuring rolling resistance in a real world scenario, it's obviously to be suspended in that way is a little bit faster, even if it goes against conventional wisdom. So it's a small weight penalty to increase weight. So that'll be one factor that may determine what, how wide they ever end up being, because there is still quite a bit of climbing and steep climbing involved in cross country, and acceleration is still something to consider. I would expect it to really take hold in, the kind of enthusiast market, the recreational, high performance, but not professional athlete side of things, where performance in that respect is kind of like longer travel bikes. It's more fun. You have more control. In some ways it's safer. But it's more fun, I think, really, because you can just push the limits a little bit farther. And so I think people will really take to that, where especially if, how fast, if you did you get the KOM is maybe not your main priority. But I can see 2.6s on a cross-country bike. We're almost there, like I said. So
assuming the manufacturers can fit them.
Right. So, of course, you have frame clearance widths, which on a full suspension bike, some of that, along with the number of cogs in the cassette in the back, have then forced crank and chain line widths to be increased as well. Crank spindle widths to clear the frames, which have to house the crank the spindle of the crankset. So everything evolves together, and it takes some coordination and cooperation among brands for these things to materialize, or at least to become the new normal. So I don't know if next year we'll see it, but I bet in the next 3 years we'll see 2.6 as being a relatively common size, even on race bikes. And if it's sooner than that, I wouldn't even be totally shocked either.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, certainly that aligns with what the guys from Lauf believe, and their simple reasoning is pretty funny, which is like gravel bikes are now butting up into mountain bike tire widths. So why wouldn't mountain bike tire widths get wider? So it's like, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, I mean, I figured you'd be a very good resource for this, because, for those that aren't familiar with Brad's background, Brad was a mountain bike mechanic in the World Cup level cross country world for mountain bike, and joined with a race with Kate Courtney, joined what I would consider to be sort of the most innovative team as far as tech goes, which is the Scott SRAM racing team. And they were, if I'm not mistaken, they were absolutely the first to be on like something as wide as a 29 by 2.4 inch wide tire at that level of the sport, and really set that trend. So yeah, I think if anyone has had experience in seeing tire widths grow, it's Brad, you're well placed for it. So yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, and so you're right about that. And one of the big things that came about during my time with Scott SRAM, which happens to be the home of the legend Nino Schurter, who is considered by most to be the greatest cross-country mountain bike racer of all time, and has been doing it. He's my age, and so we're both 38 years old, which for him is really something, as a testament to his longevity in the sport. And he recently stated in an interview that I read, I hadn't heard him say this previously,
that he owes it all to you, Brad.
I wish my stock would have gone quite a bit higher than it has. But no, it was that the most significant technical innovation that he experienced throughout his entire career, and if you think about that, that's like from the early 26-inch hardtail mechanical everything V-brakes days to now, was tire and wheel innovation, technology, and widths. So rim widths being wider, and tire widths being wider, the pressures you're able to run because of that compounds, but the rubber, the racing compounds that we've developed with Maxxis over the years, which are now commercially available as the Max Speed, if you've seen that come about. But the other 2.4 width was a big one. And of course, when we had it, everybody was asking if they could get some from us and test them, which we had like exclusivity rights with Maxxis to be the first. And I've had similar things with SRAM, with the electronic group sets that have come about. We've had some exclusivity there, and the flight attendant stuff. So it's nice to get the kind of the first taste of the new stuff. But I found it, especially with some of those innovations like flight attendant or electronic shifting, or even 29-inch wheels. I mean, I guess that kind of falls under his claim, but I mean, that's where he felt the most difference was wheel size increases and then especially tire width. So there is definitely something to the science there and to the seems like never ending increase that we're experiencing these days across all genres of bikes.
Yeah, this Lauf, I mean, it's got all the freedoms for tire clearance, and it's one of the first mountain bikes it's the first cross country bike I've got that has those freedoms. I've got trail bikes with plenty of tire clearance, but not cross country bikes. So yeah, it's sort of opening my mind to like, hang on, I'm no longer like 2.4 is no longer the biggest I can run. There is this opportunity, but the downside is that because no other cross country bike can fit such wide tires, there aren't a lot of cross country race tires available. So Lauf has collaborated with Goodyear to have a Goodyear Peak made, but it's a decent tire, but it's certainly not at the level of say like a 170 TPI Maxxis that like a lot of the pros run on. So I'm dreaming of like a 2.6 inch Maxxis Aspen in a high thread count, because I think that would really open up a bike like this to being quite dominant. But anyway, a boy can dream.
You won't have to dream too long. Like I said,
hopefully
the industry's hot on the heels of this trend anyway. So soon enough.
Yep. The only other thing that I want to talk about with the Lauf with you, Brad, is just how important do you think it is to be able to carry 2 regular bottles within a main triangle of a bike? Because this one fits 2 bottles, but it kind of requires like Fidlocks bottles because they're more space efficient. Doesn't really fit regular cages as easily.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a bit subjective. I do think that it's very nice to have the option of running 2 bottles on your mountain bike. I happen to ride a size large, which has been more accommodating of that than some sizes across brands over the years. So, but yeah, so I think, a little bit of sloping top tube, a little bit of how the suspension is laid out on this Lauf in particular gets in the way of where, specifically where the shock is mounted, gets in the way of where your conventional water bottle placements would be. So, that's the reason why, but it's either you have to get creative or carry a Camelback type hydration system, or do laps and stop or plant some bottles in the woods or whatever. And
or if you're in Iceland, just stop and put your bottle in the river next to you.
Yes. So maybe that was part of the lack of consideration because it's so simple for them that they don't even need to carry water bottles in Iceland.
We went to a trail center at one point, and I'm not even joking. There was just next to the trail, there was just a tap that was continuously running. Like there was no way to turn it off. It was just a natural, it was straight from the river, and it was kind of, naturally being pressured to come out of the water, and it's just like spouting out into like this gravel pit and then back into the earth, basically. And I'm like, well, isn't anyone going to turn this off? So, I mean, that's how abundant the water is. But yeah.
I've experienced similar things on the roadsides in Switzerland where there's a mountain spring that just happens to be pouring out of the side of the mountain. And of course, there's a basin and like a faucet attached where they've kind of added a human touch. But it's, they're well known to the local cyclists where the bottle fill up points are and stuff like that. However, if you don't have such luxuries or don't live in one of these places, it may be important to you. There have been, many bikes at the top end of the market, popular bikes, well-reviewed bikes that in size small have not ever been able to accommodate 2 bottles well. So it's not, I would say, a deal breaker or makes it impossible to own or like this bike. But what can you say? It would be nice, but there are other technologies that are built into the bike that may also be nice. And so therefore, you gotta figure it out. But if you're racing on it, 1 bottle is usually enough, and you can take some hand ups and that kind of thing. And if you're going for, a long ride that's not a race where you're self-supported, maybe you have to come up with a different plan with a hydration pack or something. But
something to consider whether it's important to you or not. To learn more about that Lauf, definitely head to Escape Collective. I've got a full write-up on that thing. Full review still to come, but there's plenty to still share in the meantime. Also, speaking of cross-country mountain bikes, BH has made itself a epic World Cup. Brad, have you seen this thing?
Yes, I have seen it. This is sort of the first time, the last couple of weeks, I think I saw a few spy photos. Finally, it was kept under like a neoprene bag for the beginning of the World Cup season, and it was conjectured that it may be like a soft tail or maybe more like a Epic World Cup or something like that, or it's
Trek
not
Super
unlike
Caliber,
like a Super Caliber or like the Epic World Cup version where it has a shock sort of very tidally housed up underneath the top tube. But this one, again, like the Trek, where the industry finds itself going in a longer and longer travel direction, every once in a while one gets really short again, and this is an 80 millimeter rear travel bike. It's obviously a cross country intended race oriented bike, so it may not be your bike for your trek across Iceland, but then again, maybe it would. It's very lightweight. It's a sleek package, a little bit derivative maybe, but
it looks nice. I'd say it's more similar to the Specialized Epic World Cup versus the Trek Super Caliber, just because it is using a standard rear shock. Yeah, but then it is a bit more similar to the Trek in that it doesn't have like a little rocker link or anything. So, it seems. I
think it does have a little rocker link in there. A very, 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 very little rocker link. It's the smallest rocker link I've ever seen, maybe, but it's in there, and I'm sure it contributes a very small amount of
I found a photo
activity. Yes, of kind of responsiveness to the suspension. Yes, where otherwise it might be relying a little too much on flex at the rear end to achieve its goals. But nevertheless, it's very, very light. It's kind of one of those
grams for a frame without shock.
Yeah. So add about 250 grams. That is for a shock, and that's your actual frame weight, depending, what you're choosing. But that's like a simple air shock, like a Sid Lux or a Fox version that's not battery powered, which might be a segue into a topic that's forthcoming. But yeah, it's a pretty nice looking bike. I don't think we're going to see too many of them in the United States. I don't see BHs hardly ever. And
no, not these days. I mean, they used to have a partnership with Pivot, but I don't think that's in place anymore. So yeah, it's much more found in Europe, and particularly very big in Spain, where it is native to.
Yes, I think it did just place, if I'm not mistaken, third at Marathon Worlds this past weekend.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So it's a race capable bike, and certainly been raced on throughout the whole season from the start of this year. So it's been in use and kept under wraps, literally under a black neoprene wrapper until this week or so.
Yeah. In a way, it's kind of like they've made the Specialized Epic World Cup, but have solved the complaints I had, which is like they haven't gone to try to do anything too creative with the rear shock. They've just put a normal rear shock in there with a remote lockout.
Right.
I kind of like this thing, but anyway, it's the more I look at it, it's growing on me, Brad.
You don't have to relearn your suspension setup as much, I would say, as you would on the Specialized, for example, which, you have some options as far as pressurizing two chambers to achieve some feelings that you may prefer one versus the other in terms of the characteristics of the bike. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, it's kind of nice. They're both marketed kind of as like the replacement to hardtails in general. Yes. It's like makes a hardtail irrelevant. It's obviously acknowledging it's not as capable as a long travel full suspension bike, but does everything that a hardtail could do with a little bit of, controlled damping added in. Yeah. So I don't always agree with companies that have decided that hardtails aren't relevant anymore. I think there's still both a consumer who would prefer the simplicity of a hardtail, and that's the only sort of catch I have on bikes of this category. And I kind of am sad too when Specialized sort of killed what became the Epic hardtail, was formerly this jump jumper hardtail, kind of an iconic model of bike that's existed since the dawn of the industry, of the mountain bikes
such
industry.
A weight leader as well. Yeah.
Yes, and they kind of don't even really make a high end carbon hardtail at all anymore. And so I don't know if I love that, but
it'll return as a drop bar bike.
It's a gravel bike now, so we'll be okay.
BH Lynx SLS is what this is if you want to look it up. Not something we're covering on Escape, but who knows? Maybe we'll review one day. Still, neat bike. All right, last on the list of new things, Brad. Another one from the mountain bike world. And this one's actually pretty exciting because it's gives competition to RockShox' Flight Attendant, which is electronically controlled suspension that is kind of changing the game. Like anyone that is affiliated with RockShox, the pro level of racing is now basically running this stuff, and I really like it. And it features on that Lauf that I've just tested or am testing, and it really does transform what you can do on a cross-country bike, and that's you basically can have a very active and open suspension design that is locked out every time you pedal. Pretty cool. But anyway, Fox have announced their version, which is, or at least have teased what will eventually become their version. Fox Live Valve Neo, so it's the next generation of Live Valve from Fox. For now, it's this new update. It is now wireless, but it's much more at the trail and gravity end of things. And currently, it's just limited to a rear shock. So they've got an air shock, the Float X, or you can get it with the coil, the DHX. Brad, it seems to offer a lot of things that we previously spoke about with their new dropper post. Much faster speed.
Yes, it's faster than a split second. So it's like even faster than a split second.
Yeah. So there's sensors that go on your front and rear brake calipers for this. And they're saying it's so fast that at race speed, your front wheel hits an object, and that sensor on the fork opens the shock up before the rear wheel comes into contact with that same bump.
Which is fantastic. And I hope it's, of course, if they're saying that for their pros who've been the ones testing it all year, and we've seen, some teasers of this product.
Yes.
For, several months, at least about a year now, at the speeds they're going, if it's doing that, then at the speed we're going, it's definitely plenty of time to respond to that input. So what's interesting about this, among many other things, is that it does not require the addition or the inclusion of a power meter for the input
Correct.
that it receives, which is a flight attendant part of the system. And, there's pluses and minuses maybe there, but that's for a sort of gravity oriented product like this, especially with like a downhill, like coil shock. I mean, that's, I would say, more along the lines of bikes you would not necessarily see with a power meter on it in the first place. So I would say it's kind of targeting, I mean, of course, there's a trail version of the flight attendant, which I would say is maybe less popular or less received with less fanfare, maybe than this cross-country package. It makes a ton of sense for cross-country, but to have it be able to respond that quickly to trail inputs and make wireless adjustments to the damping characteristics of the shock. It's an amazing thing. I expect their fork version is probably forthcoming at some point. I'm sure they'll.
You'd hope so.
Not linger on that too long. But yeah, we talked about the seat post. We saw that it kind of has a shared battery that we now see being featured on the Neo shocks that we've seen the pictures of this week. So it looks like they kind of have an entire wireless ecosystem in the works over there at Fox. And if it's anything like their normal products, I'm sure they're exceptional. So I haven't tested it, but I can imagine it's phenomenal given they've been working on it for a little while now.
So yeah, I mean, for this to be a success in cross country, it does need to also involve the fork, and I would assume Fox are working on that. But it does look really cool. Like it's not so flight attendant's a 3-position suspension, so it's open, sort of like this trail platform, and then locked. This is just open or closed, and they basically don't believe they need that middle setting just purely because of the speed of it. And it's somewhat defaulted to the closed setting in its stock setting. So it's basically, it's sensing for bumps and opening for those bumps. It'll be interesting to see if or how they can integrate this with that ideology. It'll be interesting to see how they can integrate this into a fork, given that it's kind of like currently using the sensing from that open fork to then decide what to do with the rear shock. You can imagine things might be a bit trickier to overcome with, a fork that is forever locked out and is only opening when it hits something. So we'll see. But very interesting, and it seems to tick a lot of boxes. So no doubt electronic suspension is here, and it's staying, and it's going to become increasingly important, and
it's getting really good, I would say,
it's
too.
It's really good.
I mean, there have been some wacko attempts over the years, for decades actually, at electronically managed suspension products, none of which really panned out until lately. The flight attendant group is the first one I've seen raced at a high level, adopted by all, loved by all, and won on, consistently. And it is a durable product that doesn't have extra maintenance needs or anything like that. It's a very well engineered product, and I'm sure the Fox version will be as well. I mean, the first live valve was actually great. It was just, I think,
complicated.
It was complicated because it was wired. It was heavy, so cross country riders were not interested. And even though that might have been where it was potentially best used, so I expect we'll see this product evolve further, or this category of product from Fox. And I'm pretty excited to see where it goes.
And for listeners that really don't care about mountain bikes and hopefully haven't switched off yet,
sorry.
This technology, I truly believe we'll see it come to gravel in future. It just makes too much sense not to have like a gravel suspension that is entirely locked out on the road automatically, and as soon as it senses a bump, it's active and just lets you keep floating over the terrain. For me, I think it'll still be a few years because the market demand for gravel suspension is not quite there yet, but dare I say, I think we'll get there. So,
I have no idea if any of this is actually true, but I would be really shocked if there was not some form of an Explorer flight attendant prototype in existence right now, whether it's just a fork with a power meter and some communication, but using similar algorithms and such as they have already for their access mountain bike groups. I would be shocked if it didn't exist already. And with suspension evolving on gravel bikes all the time and becoming more common, I can't imagine they wouldn't just adapt their existing technology to make a gravel platform for it. So
indeed.
We'll see it. We'll see it for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a quick break and we'll come back with what's on our mind. All right, Brad. What's on my mind is how various bike brands are seemingly trying to sell the stock they have, because times are tough at the moment, and clearly, as evident by, say, the likes of the previous owners of Kona, just giving away bikes doesn't necessarily get rid of the bikes. Where this is coming from this week, saw news that Specialized are borrowing one from the Santa Cruz world. And this actually makes sense because Rob Roshkop, the founder of Santa Cruz, is now actually within the house of Specialized. But yeah, they have announced that they're now offering lifetime bearing warranties on full suspension bikes sold from 2024 and onwards. And basically that means you get a free set of bearings under warranty each year if you need them, as arranged through a dealer. I guess the one caveat here is that you need to register your bike with Specialized within 30 days of buying it in order to get this in future. There's that. I kind of see this as a sales tactic. While I'm giving examples, Lauf, their new Elia mountain bike that we just discussed, you can actually buy that with a race experience where you get, you basically get to go and do the famous Icelandic Riff mountain bike race with the purchase of a bike. So that's the option. You can buy their top end bike with that package. Other brands seem to be back investing in demo fleets, as I think I saw Pivot doing. So Brad, that brings up what's on my mind, which is you're not working in a bike shop at the moment that sells bikes, but if you were, the brands that you sell, what would you do to sell a bike today?
Well, I think Specialized isn't off the mark too far by trying to soften the blow of the sort of ongoing expenses and maintenance required with any modern bicycle. A lot of bike shops do this already, and I think like a little bit of a service-oriented incentive, which is like not going to cost you as the shop money per se, other than the time that you spend doing it. I think there's some element of that is kind of expected, or kind of a legacy feature from bike shops forever, that every shop I've ever worked in has done some kind of tune-up that is offered as a courtesy once you've spent a month or two, or as many as maybe 90 days riding the bike, and you bring it in for like a thorough going over. Inevitably, these bikes these days, and this kind of goes back to me lamenting about the death of the hardtail, these suspension bikes, I will say it's one of the most overlooked or sort of underdone services, is frequently addressing the suspension bearings themselves, like the pivot bearings. They are under a lot of load. It's actually one of the features of the Lauf that you've tested. I was intrigued kind of the most about the way that they've mounted the rear shock, where there's kind of some flexible tabs that will dissipate, let's say, some of the side loading of the shock as it's, if you're like leaning over on the bike through a rough corner, the loads are kind of vertical or up and down from the ground, but the bike's, at a 45-degree angle. And so some of that side loading into the shock or into the linkages can be quite can do some, slowly deteriorate the surfaces that the bearings roll on, or even the suspension components themselves without servicing them regularly. So it's a cool feature on the Lauf, but it sort of shines some light on some vulnerability of other bikes that don't accommodate for that. And it's kind of one of those things that I think people who just have BMC spent, over $10,000 on a bike, or got a frame that costs $9,000. That's a big chunk of change. So then do you want to go and spend like $400 getting your suspension bearings replaced, 4 months after you bought your new S-Works Epic with flight attendant and blah, blah, blah. And, so it's an expensive hobby, and the way that bikes are evolving, the maintenance is becoming more intensive and expensive as well. And, there's certainly a market for that. That's kind of, you mentioned I'm not in a shop that sells bikes. We're actually a shop that kind of focuses to the extent that we can on that type of service, where we really do what's actually necessary to keep high-level bikes at a high level. Kind of defeats the purpose of spend all that money and not do the service, because then you're not getting the full performance out of the bike that you originally paid for. But so that gets back to where Specialized is, I think, trying to soften the inevitable blow of having to do these types of service and
the long-term, the actual cost of ownership.
The actual cost, yeah. And so this is obviously something that would never be addressed in a shop's tune-up that comes with the purchase of a new bike. It's definitely more to it. I don't know that they cover the cost of the labor.
Do not. No, the labor is up to the shop to charge. Yep.
Yes.
And there's no set fees on that.
Yes. And so unfortunately, for the cost of a bearing versus the cost of a shop's labor, you're still going to be paying a decent amount of money, because the bearings are only a few dollars really for those little suspension bearings, but the labor is still what the labor is. And, that can be a couple of hours of time. So, but it's not nothing. And it kind of also, again, brings some focus on the fact that the bikes do require it, or should have this service done pretty regularly to keep them working correctly. And I think, and I see a lot of people who've bought these very nice bikes and they bring them in and they're so beyond clapped that like they're unrideable pretty much. And so
it's a slow degradation of quality. So the rider typically gets accustomed and used to the bike feeling that way. But as a mechanic, you're like, your bike is at 70% function.
Scary. Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can feel like a looseness, and that kind of will be sort of a telltale symptom if you are unfamiliar with checking for that kind of stuff. But it's a good thing to offer. I think it also incentivizes that you register your bike with Specialized. Maybe you don't want to, give them all your info, but it's kind of nice actually to have a database and information for warranty purposes in the future, regardless of this little incentive for them to know the kind of the life and times of the bike that you own. So there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you're kind of agreeing with Specialized's approach here, but back to get to the original question, which is like,
what would I do?
What would you do to sell the bike? Are you going to take the workshop route and from a service point of view, we'll give you incentives there?
I think as the bike shop, that's kind of your best bet. A lot of shops, including the one I recently, the last retail shop I was in, will do like a time of purchase, or maybe even within the first 30 days of purchase, like a discount that for anything you like, what accessories you buy with the bike, not the bike itself. Or if you realize, 2 weeks later, I wish I'd bought, some shoes and like a new helmet and, some blah, 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 whatever. It still applies. I think that's pretty good. It doesn't cut into the, profit margins in the bike industry are pretty slim these days. They've always been, and it's getting slimmer by the year, it seems. And so, it's tough as a shop to give away too much actual inventory or get steep discounts on it without taking a loss. And I don't think that's in any shop's interest or customers either.
No, kind of goes against the fundamentals of business.
Yes, exactly. And it's not a charity. And so I think, that's the way, and it's to figure out kind of a compelling enough service package. It's not just like barrel adjusters and wiping off the frame, but like you actually do something and make a appreciable difference in the way the bike feels when the customer gets it back. hopefully you're not spending hours on it, because hour of mechanics time is, $20, $30, depending on who you are, where you are. A couple hours. So that, you don't want to give it all away at the same time you're paying somebody. So, it's a tough line to walk, but, at least Specialized is kind of heading in the right direction with that. They've kind of been guilty of doing the other thing over the years, where they kind of screw shops over a little bit here and there with, you know what I mean? Direct to consumer stuff has definitely been something that has not been popular among many brands, including Specialized, and kind of feels like they're underselling or kind of undervaluing the retailers at times. So, hopefully this resets the balance and sends some shops some labor.
Yeah, it is an interesting development, because clearly it must have done something for Santa Cruz's sales, for the fact that Rob Roshkop's decided to, bring this to Specialized. They wouldn't just be giving away bearings if for no reason. So, there must be something there in it. I'm intrigued. I think, I'm kind of interested to see how brands are handling this kind of slow period and needing to move stock, because clearly just making it cheaper isn't the only answer. There needs to be more at the moment, and it's kind of interesting to see various brands taking unique approaches. I quite like the experience package myself. I think that's quite a cool concept.
That's way more fun than a bearing.
Logistically, a lot harder.
Yeah, I think it was Polestar Cars, Volvo derivative vehicle manufacturer over there. It's kind of in the neighborhood of Iceland, a Swedish company, but Scandinavian kind of themes. And they do that with their cars too, or they offer that at least for if you're going to buy a new one, you can come to the factory and, have an experience. And I'm sure other luxury brands are doing this too. And it's a way to position your brand and to kind of also build like a customer's opinion of your brand for future sales that may happen someday in the future. So so it's cool. That's a good idea.
On Guza, the Namibian bike brand, out of the steel frame, pretty cool brand, custom bikes. I think they're another one that at least had teased the idea of, buy a bike, come to Namibia and pick it up, and we'll show you around. So I think this could be a pretty cool way for more niche brands to sell bikes. I'm all for it. But anyway, I don't have any strong answers for bike shops listening that are looking for creative ways to sell their bikes. Sorry, but hope things pick up. All right, Brad, it's time for Ask a Wrench. So let's hear from some members who have submitted some questions. And just a reminder that if you're a member of Escape Collective, you too can ask a question. We like to have them submitted via voice now, where possible. So escapecollective.com/hello is where you should head to as a member. Introduce yourself, where you're from, ask your question. Try to keep it brief, and we'll do our best to answer it. Let's get to this week's question. So let's hear from Michael from North Carolina first up.
My name is Michael. I'm a bicycle mechanic in North Carolina, the United States. And I've just been mostly really curious about longevity in the bicycle industry. So, I really enjoy being a mechanic. I don't necessarily not want to be a mechanic, but at some point, my skills are bigger than my pay. So I guess my question specifically maybe for Brad is how have you kept making money, or do you just not make a lot of money and you live simply and you do fun projects instead? Or because clearly both you and Dave have exorbitant knowledge, so that's very valuable. And one shouldn't be selling themselves short, right? Yeah, so I'm just curious if y'all have any advice. I know, Brad, that you're doing that new thing in DC, and that sounds super cool. But it's also super niche, right? And probably for really select few people who can spend lots of money on bikes, it requires a specific market and all that. Yeah, so really appreciate you guys. Love listening to y'all on doing my own wrenching. So keep it up. Thanks a lot. Take good care.
All right, Brad, this question actually follows quite nicely on from what was just on our minds and talking about bike shops and servicing and the cost of servicing and all that. What's your advice here? A mechanic that has sort of reached a point with a skill set where they think they're not getting paid enough for said skill set. It's a common complaint in the bike industry. Brad, what's thoughts?
Well, as a fellow mechanic from North Carolina, first of all, hello. Thanks for listening. Big ups to North Carolina. I would say step one, be willing to relocate. That's follow opportunities where they exist. Dave is correct that the industry has been long plagued by mechanics feeling undervalued and ultimately usually leaving and going to other industries where they are
Sadly
more
so.
valued.
Yep.
It's a sad thing that I've witnessed a lot of times with a lot of my friends. Not sad, really sad for me. If they left me behind, they have gone on and flourished elsewhere. And so it's fine. But in the parts of your question that applied to like my own personal experience, I would say, a lot of how I ended up where I am was by saying yes to some opportunities that weren't easy, to some lifestyles that weren't always easy for, years at a time on the road, which were both fun, but also quite challenging and time consuming. So, it's a trade-off a little bit in terms of what you might call free time, and what you're willing to kind of accept or put up with. Certainly for the first years, I wasn't making tons of money either. Or, I think no one in conventional bike shops, there's definitely like a ceiling on what realistically shops can kind of pay. But if you can express and sort of account for your value and show, whether it's a bike shop or a brand or, something that's bike adjacent that keeps you in the industry, and you can kind of leverage what value you present into real monetary gains for the company or the brand or whomever that is. That's kind of the way. That's kind of true in all jobs. And so I would say the hard part in the bike industry is that those jobs are few and far between, kind of, and they may require sacrifice of some sort, whether it's personal time or the convenience of living where you currently do and having to move somewhere quite far away, which I did when I moved from. I'd left North Carolina, but I was still on the East Coast and moved to California and kind of picked up my whole existence and kind of rolled the dice on that. But it was a good decision for me ultimately in my career. So speaking from my experience, I would say don't hang around if you're being undervalued for very long. If you've expressed, your feelings about your value, can kind of demonstrate your value, and you're still feeling undervalued, then you may be in a place that, isn't for you in the long term. And so you might have to be willing to look farther afield and seek opportunities where they exist and not expect everyone that you're currently around to adapt to what you think you're worth. So that's the hard part, but it's the only way.
Yeah. And as Brad said, I mean, there are opportunities out there, but they're few and far between. And I'd say the problem is for the most part, the bike industry does undervalue its mechanics. And I think the way the world is trending with many jobs and being threatened by AI, I would love to think that the hands-on skill sets of a mechanic will carry greater value in future. But I mean, history unfortunately hasn't shown that. And yeah, really what it'll take is the bike industry to follow more of a European model where bike mechanics need to be professionally trained and need to hold trade certificates and that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of where we have to go in order for the profession to be treated like a true profession, and for those skills to be rewarded. Not an easy one to answer because, even the automotive world, I know many mechanics who have struggled to make a good living through that world, despite being professionally trained and having to go find other industries to work in. So the sad reality is it's often the people that are really passionate that decide to stick around and let passion fuel the job rather than purely financial incentives.
Yes.
No happy answers there, but
yeah, it's definitely a job too. Like he says that sort of the amount and specificity of knowledge is quite broad. If you're, especially as always growing, always changing, always evolving every year. It's nice if you've been in it for a while because you can at least see patterns and see how things have evolved and kind of understand it from that perspective to a degree, which also adds value to you as the individual who possesses it. But it's a tough one, and there's not a union behind it that sets a standard for salaries and kind of treatment of employees, hours, overtime situations, all this stuff that is kind of inherent to the job of a bike mechanic. It's seasonally, it's either insane or kind of dead sometimes, depending where you live. So it can be a frustrating life because your hours may may get cut when you're already feeling undervalued. And so it's definitely a tough one to stick through. But if you're willing to keep at it and look and move and adapt, then there are ways to stay in the industry that are still fruitful and you don't live like a bum, so, but it's tough. Yeah. It's tough, and you have to really, commit to it. So,
good luck, Michael. Hope you find a path that pays you acceptably for the skills you've built. So, all right, next question. This one comes from Steve of Cheddar in the UK.
Hi, geeks. I'm Steve from Cheddar in the UK. My Shimano Di2 race bike is about to be put into hibernation for the winter. Do I need to disconnect the battery to protect it? Love to hear from you. Thanks for all your advice. Bye now.
I just like how we went from talking about money to a guy from Cheddar. That's cool. Did you plan that, or is that just a little coinky dink? Anyway, take it away, Dave. Yeah.
All right, Brad. I think I might just answer this one straight from the manual, which is I reached out to Terry from Better Shifting, who's basically a fanatic of Di2 and runs a website dedicated to all things Di2 related, and he
that is a resource. That is a resource for anybody in a bike shop. Bettershifting.com. If you don't know it,
so I went
straight. It's awesome.
It is great. So I went straight to the source on this one, and he then went straight to the source himself, pointing out that Shimano in their manual actually have details on how to store Di2. So I'll just read that section for you, which is if storing the battery away for a long period, remove it when the battery level is 50% or higher. The indicator is illuminated in green at this point, in order to prolong its useful life. It is recommended that you charge the battery about once every half a year. It goes on, store the battery or bicycles with the battery installed in a cool indoor place, approximately 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, where they do not become exposed to direct sunlight or rain. If the storage temperature is low or high, the performance of the battery is reduced and its available time will be shorter. When you use the battery after a long storage period, be sure to fully charge it before use. Basically, you can remove it or you can just keep it connected. But yeah, I think the level at which you keep it charged seems more important than whether it's plugged in or not. Brad, anything to add on that one?
Well, far be it from me to deviate from the manual. My experience has been similar, though. The very bike we mentioned at the beginning in my forever collection, the Cervelo R5CA, is a Di2 equipped bike, and it doesn't get ridden much anymore. It's more just for my nostalgia and just to go stare at it longingly. But it is a Di2 bike. Pick it up with your pinky
once in a while.
Yeah, just once in a while.
Yeah.
And so it's a Di2 bike. I keep the battery connected. I'll charge it, 1 or 2 times a year, and the battery lasts and has never seemed to have a noticeable decrease in its capacity or anything like that. So, and it is kept much like a wine bottle, as he described, in a basement, cool, dry basement, where it's not like being exposed to ridiculous temperature swings or anything like that. So if you're able to keep your bike out of extreme cold temperatures over this winter time where you're concerned, I would not expect that it would matter greatly either way, frankly.
Yeah. My initial thought to the question is it's like you're probably better off keeping everything plugged in, and then that way all the ports are sealed.
Yeah, that's a good
whereas, point. If you take a plug out, I'd probably be tempted to cover the plugs or put a dummy plug in place, and you might not have those available. So yeah, I think you're just probably better off keeping it plugged in and make sure that the charge level is appropriate before you put it in storage, and ideally store it somewhere where it won't get too cold or too hot. So the other advice from Terry is just make sure that your shifter buttons are not being depressed while you store it, because he said that'll obviously keep the shifter running until the shifter battery dies. And so yeah, that was another little tidbit. But good luck for winter. Lucky last, we have a question from Ian of the sunny coast in Australia.
Hey there, geeks. It's Ian from the sunny coast in Australia. I have some DT Swiss, I want to say 511 rims that I've built up for my gravel bike. And weirdly, it's almost like the black paint on them fades really quickly. It sort of de-blackens, if that makes sense. And I've tried a few things to try and protect them. It seems like I found a good product to protect them. But any suggestions for re-blackening my rims? I thought about, I could use paint, but I don't really want to paint them. That just seems fraught. I don't know, shoe polish, maybe. I don't know, any ideas for re-blackening my DT Swiss 511 aluminium gravel rims? Thanks so much, team. Love your work.
So, Brad, any advice? I mean, this is basically anodization fading. Any advice for someone perhaps seeing too much sun?
Yeah, I don't have any good advice, unfortunately. It's a relatively common,
It is.
commonly seen thing. It's obviously like a UV. We kind of talked about this with carbon earlier. You know, bikes paint. Some bikes come with like a sticker on them now that says bright paint may fade over time as like a warning, because it will. Like neon colors, especially, are sensitive to fading when exposed to UV light for periods of time. I've even seen bikes that sat in the window at a bike shop for too long. I took them down, and one half of the bike was noticeably different kind of hue of color than the side that was facing inboard. So, unfortunately, that's a reality of too much sun exposure, and sometimes just time in general. You'll often see on like lower end bikes that come in the shop, if you like take a reflector off the handlebar, you'll see like a band where it's still nice dark black color from a factory, and the rest of the bar is kind of like a root beer brown color. It's just from how the anodized finish has faded over time. And so I don't know that whether shoe polish or any other form of kind of blackening agent would serve a lasting or really kind of useful purpose at all. I would kind of be more worried about what I put on the rim than about the rim color kind of fading like it is. But keeping your bike parked and out of direct sunlight might be like the best advice I could give. It's obviously you have to ride outside, so there's some limitations there. But if you are able to keep your bike in a shed or in a garage or in your basement or wherever, that'll at least preserve as much as can be preserved, let's say.
Yep. Two thoughts. One, you can apply sunscreen to your rims. No, but another one, which, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, and it's not going to look good on all bikes, but silver rims are kind of making a comeback. And I have seen some pretty cool examples of where people have used certain chemicals. Chemicals are present in oven cleaners to strip anodization and then polish up these rims. So you end up with like really crazy cool looking DT Swiss polished silver rims. So I mean, yeah, it kind of sounds like you're perhaps, love the way your bikes look and really want to preserve that look, and perhaps you might be on a bike where silver wheels could look awesome, and this might be one way to not have to worry about them being black anymore. Crazy thought.
Yeah, take it to the limit. Yeah, take it all the way there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, unfortunately, very common for aluminium products with anodization to suffer in the sun, especially in the Australian sun. So, kind of just cost of riding for some of these products, or alternatively, you can look to carbon product or silver rims.
Yeah, other than the time and effort to polish a rim might be equivalent to the time and effort to build a new rim into your existing
or reapply sunscreen to your rims.
Sunscreen. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I don't have any other magical tricks up my sleeve, unfortunately, for this one.
Fair enough. All right. Well, yeah, hopefully that's gives you some ideas, or at least lets you accept that your rims will fade. But yeah, I guess that concludes this week's episode of Geek Warning. Hope you enjoyed it, and as a reminder to everyone listening in, Geek Warning is a product from Escape Collective, and Escape Collective is wholly and solely funded by our memberships. We don't have any advertising, there's no affiliate links, no sponsored content. Just what you read is created for our readers. And yeah, what you're listening to is the same story. So if you like the content and you want to take in more of it, we have plenty of member-exclusive content these days, including podcasts and written content. So yeah, please head to escapecollective.com/member. Sign up, support what we do, and enjoy everything that we do. But yeah, until then, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Brad, same time next week.
I'll be here, Dave. Looking forward to it.
Great. I'm sure the bike industry will treat us to plenty more tech between now and then. So, we'll be back. All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy riding.